Well, good evening, lads and lasses. Wrong screen. That's the screen we want. Much better. Good evening, everyone. How are we all feeling today? Today well, it's experimental Tuesdays, I suppose. So, I'm trying for a more experimental style. So be careful. Do tell me how everything sounds. I am sitting a bit closer to my microphone these days. See if I can't get one of those, ASMR feeling things, eh? I know that's not how quite ASMR works, but... I know that's not how quite ASMR works, but... I am sitting a bit closer to my mic, and not projecting as much. Speaking with a more... Sitting a bit closer to my mic, not projecting as much. Speaking with a more... As you guys are hearing an echo, sorry about that. I wasn't sounding gravelly. Yes, today, a bit of a simple thing. I was reminded of all the old bedtime stories I used to listen to. Grimm's fairy tales, and an Australian classic, The Adventures of Blinky Bill. I remember telling my niece and nephews these stories and reading them at night time and all that sort of thing. I also remember being read bedtime stories myself, though in my case, it was almost the entire Lord of the Rings series because my mother didn't believe in bloody ordinary bedtime stories. She read us full novels. Very good. Oh, goodness. So, it's very nostalgic, I suppose, this sort of thing. So I thought, slower, quiet form of video. Sound very airy, don't I? I suppose I could get much closer to the mic and really get that closeness. Really annoy you, grind your ears. Read the fairy tale. In olden times, when there was still of some use to wish for the one thing wanted, there lived a king. Yes, do tell me if you want the music on or off. Because that. Silence myself so I don't get even distracted by my own voice. Not very ASMR of me. But ooh, calm and I think I'm gonna move my mic down, so let me mute myself. Did I somehow mute myself? Because I could hear myself before. Strange. How did I do that? Oh yes, I muted because I moved the mic. Yes. Well, that would be very awkward now. But yes, do tell me if everything is going well. If I'm getting the desired effect by sitting about 3 centimeters from my microphone. I'm not speaking directly into it. This is speaking directly into it. You tell me if I'm getting that comfortable effect. I'm quietly speaking. More relaxed tone. And funnily enough, I feel like my voice has dropped a few tones too. Suppose this is the advantage of speaking quietly. But yes, if there's any favourite tales of yours, do give me a shout. I'd love to read some. Of course, I won't be able to read all of the tales. Perhaps I'll read just the first chapter of a few things. The Adventures of Blinky Bill. Classic Australian story. I would wait for people, but I don't tend to get many viewers when I do these Tuesday streams, unless I so happen to catch somebody's eye. But yes. What shall we start with? We could start with number 1, Grimm's Fairy Tale, Children's and Household Tales, by old the Brothers Grimm, The Frog King or Iron Henry. A bit hunched over this microphone. Yeah. Do tell me if you like the music or not. I did go looking for ASMR sounds, and I'm not really doing ASMR. This is really a test for this sort of style. So, I wouldn't say it's ASMR style, but it's close, that's for sure. So, if you like the music, leave it. If you don't, I suppose. I don't know what I was going to finish that sentence with. But let's begin. One old tale from the Brothers Grimm. Frog King or Iron Henry. In the olden times, when it was still of some use to wish for the thing that one wanted, there lived a king. His daughters were all handsome, but the youngest was so beautiful that the sun himself, who had seen so much, wondered each time he shone over her because of her beauty. Near the royal castle there was a great dark wood, and in the wood under the old linden tree was a well. And when the day was hot, the king's daughter used to go forth into the wood and sit by the brink of the cool well. Natsuki. Oh, a story tale that makes me feel calm. Wonderful. And if time seemed long, she would take out a golden ball and throw up and catch it again. And this was her favourite pastime. Now it happened one day that the golden ball, instead of coming back into the maiden's little hand, which had sent it aloft, dropped into the ground near the edge of the well and rolled in. The king's daughter followed it with her eyes as it sank. The well was deep, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Then she began to weep, and she wept and wept as if she could never be comforted. And in the midst of her weeping, she heard a voice saying to her, "What ails thee, king's daughter? Thy tears would melt a heart of stone." And when she looked to see where the voice came from, there was nothing but a frog stretching his thick, ugly head out of the water. "Oh, is it you, little waddler?" she said. "I weep because my golden ball has fallen into the well." "Never mind, do not weep," answered the frog. "I can help you. But what will you give me if I fetch your ball again?" "Whatever you like, dear frog," she said. "Any of my clothes, my pearls and jewels, or even the golden crown that I wear." "Thy clothes, thy pearls and jewels, and thy golden crown are not for me," answered the frog. "But if thou wouldst love me, and have me for thy companion and playfellow, let me sit by thee at a table, and eat from thy plate, and drink from thy cup, and sleep in thy little bed. Thou wouldst promise me all this, then I would dive below the water, and fetch thee thy golden ball again." "Oh yes," she answered, "I will promise it all, whatever you want, if you will only get me my ball again." She thought to herself, "What nonsense he talks, as if he could do anything but sit in the water and croak like other frogs. Could possibly be any of one's companion." But the frog, as soon as he heard her promise, drew his head under the water and sank out of sight. But after a while he came to the surface again with the ball in his mouth, and he threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was overjoyed to see her pretty plaything again. She caught it up and ran with it. "Stop! Stop!" cried the frog. "Take me up too! I cannot run as fast as you." But it was no use. Croak after her as he might, she would not listen to him, but made haste home, and very soon forgot all about the poor frog, who had to betake himself to his well once again. The next day, when the king's daughter was sitting at a table, the king and all the court, and eating from her golden plate, there came a something pitter-patter up the marble stairs, and there came a knocking at the door, and a voice crying, "Youngest king's daughter, let me in." And she got up, and ran to see who it could be. Then she shut the door hastily, and went back. But then she opened the door, and the frog was sitting outside. She then shut the door hastily, and went back to her seat, feeling very uneasy. The king noticed how quickly her heart was beating, and said, "My child, what are you afraid of? Is there a giant standing at the door, ready to carry you away?" "Oh no," she answered. "No giant, but a horrid frog." "And what does the frog want?" asked the king. "Oh dear father," answered she, "when I was sitting by the well yesterday, and playing with my golden ball, it fell into the water. And while I was crying for the loss of it, the frog came and got it for me on the condition that I would let him be my companion. But I never thought he would leave the water and come after me. But now there he is, outside the door, and he wants to come in to me." And then they all heard the knocking the second time, and the cry, "Youngest king's daughter, open to me by the well water what you promised me. Youngest king's daughter, now open to me." "That which thou hast promised must thou perform," said the king. "So now go and let him in." She went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in, following at her heels, till she reached her chair. And he stopped and cried, "Lift me to sit by you." She delayed in doing so until the king ordered her. When the frog was on the chair, he wanted to get on the table, and there he sat and said, "Now push your golden plate a little nearer, so that we may eat together." So she did, but everyone might see how unwilling she was, and the frog feasted heartily, but every morsel seemed to stick in her throat. "I have had enough now," said the frog at last, "and as I am tired, you must carry me to your room, and make ready your silken bed, and we shall lie down and sleep." The king's daughter then began to weep, and was afraid of the court frog, that nothing would satisfy him, but he must sleep in her pretty clean bed. Now the king grew angry with her, saying, "That which thou hast promised in thy time of necessity, now must perform." So she picked up the frog with her finger and thumb, and carried him to the upstairs, and put him in a corner. And when she had lain down to sleep, he came creeping up, saying, "I am tired. I want to sleep as much as you. Take me up, or I will tell your father." She felt beside herself with rage. Picking him up, she threw him with all her strength against the wall, crying, "Now you will be quiet, you horrid frog!" But as he fell, he ceased to be a frog, and became all at once a prince with beautiful, kind eyes. Well, that's certainly different from what I remember. As that came to pass, her father's consent, they became bride and bridegroom, and he told her how a wicked witch had bound him with her spells, but no one but she could have released him, and that they two would go together to his father's kingdom. And there came to the door a carriage drawn by 8 white horses, with plumes on their head and golden harnesses, and behind the carriage was standing Faithful Henry, the servant of the young prince. Now Faithful Henry suffered such care and pain when his master was turned into a frog, that he had been obliged to wear 3 iron bands over his head, to keep it from breaking with trouble and anxiety. When the carriage started to take the prince to his kingdom, and Faithful Henry had helped them both in, he got up behind, and was full of joy at his master's deliverance. And when they had gone a part of the way, the prince heard a sound at the back of the carriage, as if something has broken. He turned around and cried, "Henry! The wheel must be breaking. The wheel does not break. 'Tis the band round my heart, that to lessen its ache, when I grieved for your sake, I bound round my heart." Again, and yet once again, there was the same sound, and the prince thought it must be the wheel breaking, but it was the breaking of the other bands from faithful Henry's heart. And now he was relieved and happy. Well, certainly didn't realize the prince turned into a prince after suffering terrible head trauma. How bizarre. But that is the nature of these sort of things. They never really be as you expect. How do you all feel about that? Did you enjoy how I read it? Did I enjoy it slower, faster, enunciate more? I'm trying to not add too much emotion. I'm trying to recall how I used to tell bedtime stories to my niece and nephews. You want to put a bit of emotion into it, but you don't want to put too much. Because otherwise you'll excite them and they'll never go to sleep. Get all huppity. Ah, the princess threw the frog against the wall. Hilarious. But yes, do tell me how you all feel about that. Otherwise, I'll just keep reading. It was good. Make me realize that I never read the original version of these tales. They're never as you expect them, are they? They're quite fun. Yes, I was only ever read novels as a child. Forgot to have. Well, at least I don't remember being read those very basic stories, like, what is the famous one? The Hungry Hungry Caterpillar, that one. It's something I want to do, eventually if I can organize it, once I have a lot more time. But I wanted to organize perhaps an interactive screen when I'm reading the tales. As if I've got a book right there on the screen. See what I want to do at some point. I couldn't quite figure it out. One day, when I'm reading these bedtime stories, I'll be able to have it turning. Now, jump to the next tale. Another Grimm's, because most of these will be Grimm's, but I will read a bit of Blinky Bill, Australian classic. Here we go with another Grimm one. This one's called The Story of the Youth Who Went Forth to Learn What Fear Was. Great bedtime story, isn't it? A certain father had 2 sons, the elder of whom was smart and sensible, and could do everything, but the younger was stupid, and could neither learn nor understand anything. And when people saw him, they said, "There's a fellow who'll give his father some trouble." And when anything had to be done, it was always the elder who was forced to do it. But his father bade him to fetch anything when it was late, or in the night time, and the way led through a churchyard, or any other dismal place. He answered, "Oh no, father, I'll not go there, it makes me shudder." For he was afraid. Or when stories were told by the fire at night, which made the flesh creep, and the listeners sometimes said, "Oh, it makes us shudder," the younger sat in the corner and listened with the rest of them, and could not imagine what they mean. They are always saying, "It makes me shudder, it makes me shudder." But it does not make me shudder, thought he. That too must be art of which I understand nothing. Now it came to pass that his father said to him one day, "Hearken to me, thou fellow in the corner there. Thou art growing tall and strong, and thou must learn something by which thou canst earn thy living. Look how thy brother works, but thou dost not even earn thy salt." "Well, father," he replied, "I am quite willing to learn something, indeed, if I could be managed. I should like to learn how to shudder. I don't understand it at all." "But thou wilt not earn thy bread." Okay, sorry, lost my sentence. "Well, father, I am quite willing to learn something, indeed, if it could be managed. I'd like to learn how to shudder. I don't understand that at all yet." The elder brother smiled when he heard that, and thought to himself, "Good God, what a blockhead that brother of mine is! He will never be good for anything for as long as he lives. He who wants to be a sickle must bend himself betimes." The father sighed, and answered, "Thou shalt learn what it is to shudder, but thou wilt not earn thy bread by that." Soon after this, the sexton came to the house on a visit, and the father bewailed his trouble, and told him how his youngest son was so backward in every respect that he knew nothing and learnt nothing. "Just think," said he, "when I asked him how he was going to earn his bread, he actually wanted to learn to shudder." "Oh, if that be all," replied the sexton, "he can learn that with me. Send him to me, and I will soon polish him." The father was glad to do it, for he thought, "It will train the boy a little." The sexton therefore took him to his house, and he had to ring a bell. After a day or two, the sexton woke him at midnight, and bade him to arise and go up to the church tower and ring the bell. "Thou shalt soon learn what shuddering is," thought he, and secretly went there before him. And when the boy was at the top of the tower and turned around, and was just going to take hold of the bell rope, he saw a white figure standing on the stairs opposite the sounding hole. "Who is there?" cried he. The figure made no reply, and did not move or stir. "Give an answer," cried the boy, "or take thyself off. Thou hast no business here at night." The sexton, however, remained standing motionless, that the boy might think it was a ghost. The boy cried a second time, "What do you want here? Speak if thou art an honest fellow, or I will throw thee down the steps." The sexton thought, "He can't intend to be as bad as his words," uttered no sound, and stood as if he were made of stone. The boy then called out at him for a third time, and as there was also no purpose, he ran against him and pushed the ghost down the stairs, so that it found down 10 steps and remained there lying in the corner. Thereupon he rang the bell and went home without saying a word, and went to bed. He then fell asleep. The sexton's wife waited a long time for her husband, but he did not come back. He did not come back. At length she became uneasy, and wakened the boy, and asked, "Dost thou not know where my husband is? He climbed the tower before thou didst?" "No, I do not know," replied the boy, "but someone was standing by the sounding hole on the side of the steps. As he would neither give an answer nor go away, I took him for a scoundrel and threw him downstairs. Just go there and you will see it was he. I should be sorry if it were." The woman ran away and found her husband, who was lying moaning in the corner, and had broken his leg. She carried him down, and with loud screams she hastened to the boy's father. "Your boy," she cried, "has been the cause of great misfortune. He has thrown my husband down the steps and made him break his leg. Take that good-for-nothing fellow away from our house." The father was terrified, and ran thither to scold the boy. "What wicked tricks are these?" said he. "The devil must have put this into thy head." "Father," replied, "do listen to me. I am quite innocent. I was standing there by night, like one who was intending to do some evil. I do not know who it was, and I entreated him 3 times to either speak or to go away." "Ah," said the father, "I have nothing but unhappiness with you. Get out of my sight. I will see thee no more." "Yes, father, right willingly. Wait only until it is day, then I will go forth and learn how to shudder, and then I shall, at any rate, understand one art which shall support me." "Learn what thou wilt," spake the father. "It is all the same to me. Here are 50 thalers for thee. Take these and go into the wide world, and tell no one from whence thou comest, and who is thy father, for I have reason to be ashamed of thee." "Yes, father, it shall be as you will. You desire nothing more than that? I can easily keep it in mind." Ooh, it's quite a long one. Why is it every time I miss your streams, it's awesome Hitman player, and when you say it's story time for the kiddies? Well, mate. Never get up early enough for the Hitman streams, could they? Shame, but it's nice to see you here, Panda Knives. Perhaps next week, just for you, when I do my morning stream. For me, it is morning, it's evening. When I do my morning stream on Tuesday, I'll do a Hitman. It'll be a week of Hitman. Just for you. Last time it was poetry, which is not necessarily for kidding. Hitman is one of my favourite games. Yes, I always do it quite early in the morning. When you caught my previous streams, that was quite early in the morning, so you'd have to be getting up there on Thursday morning, I believe. You want to catch those streams. At least the next two will be Thursday and Sunday morning for you. Don't mind. There's more of this story. When day dawned, therefore, the boy put his 50 thalers into his pocket, and went forth on the great highway, and continually said to himself, "If I could but shudder! If I could but shudder!" When a man approached who heard this conversation which the youth was holding with himself. And when they had walked a little farther to where they could see the gallows, the man said to him, "Look, there is the tree where 7 men have married the ropemaker's daughter, and are now learning how to fly. Sit down below it, and wait till night comes, and you will soon learn how to shudder." "Oh, if that is all that is wanted," answered the youth, "it is easily done. If I learn how to shudder as fast as that, thou shalt have my 50 thalers. Just come back to me early in the morning." Then the youth went down to the gallows, sat below it, and waited till evening came. And as he was cold, he lighted himself a fire, and waited till evening. But at midnight the wind blew so sharply that in spite of his fire he could not get warm. And as the wind knocked the hanged men against each other, they moved backwards and forwards. He thought to himself, "Thou shiverest below the fire, but how those up above must freeze and suffer." And as he felt pity for them, he raised a ladder and climbed up, unbound one of them after the other, and brought down all 7. He stirred the fire, blew it, and sat them around to warm themselves. But they sat there and did not stir, and the fire caught their clothes. So he said, "Take care, or I will hang you up again." The dead men, however, did not hear, but were quite silent, and let their rags go on burning. On this he grew angry, and said, "If you will not take care, I cannot help you, and I will not be burnt with you." And he hung them up again, each in his turn. Then he sat down by the fire and fell asleep. And the next morning the man came to him and wanted to have the 50 thalers, and said, "Well, dost thou know how to shudder?" "No," answered he. "How was I to get to know? Those fellows up there did not open their mouths. They were so stupid they let the few rags which they had upon their bodies get burnt." The man saw that he would not get the 50 thalers that day, and went away saying, "Ah, this is one kind that has never come my way before." The youth likewise went his way, once more began to mutter to himself, "Ah, if I could just but shudder. Ah, if I could just but shudder." A wagoner who was striding behind him heard that and asked, "Who are you?" "I don't know," answered the youth. And the wagoner asked, "From whence thou comest?" "I know not." "Who is thy father?" "That I may not tell thee." "What is it thou art always muttering between thy teeth?" "Ah," said the youth, "I do so wish I could shudder, but no one can teach me how to do it." "Give up thy foolish chatter," said the wagoner. "Come, go with me, I will see about a place for thee." The youth went to the wagoner, and in the evening they arrived at an inn, where they wished to pass the night. Then, at the entrance of the room, the youth said quite loudly, "If I could but shudder! If I could but shudder!" The host, who heard this, laughed and said, "If that is your desire, there ought to be a good opportunity for you here." "Ah, be silent," said the host. "So many inquisitive persons have already lost their lives. It would be a pity, a shame if such beautiful eyes of these could never see the daylight again." But the youth said, "However difficult it may be, I will learn it, and for this purpose, indeed, I have journeyed forth." He let the host have no rest until the latter told him that not far from thence stood a haunted castle, where anyone could easily learn what shuddering was, if he could but watch it in turn for 3 nights. The king had promised that he who would venture should have his daughter to wife, and and she was the most beautiful in the maiden the sun shone on. Great treasures likewise lay in the castle, guarded by evil spirits, and these treasures would then be freed, and would make a poor man rich enough. Already many men had gone to the castle, but yet as none had come out again. When the youth went the next morning to the king, and said if he were allowed he would watch 3 nights in the haunted castle. The king looked at him, and as the youth pleased him, that he said, "Thou makest ask for 3 things to take into the castle with thee, but they must be things without life." Then he answered, "I ask for a fire, a turning lathe, and a cutting board with the knife." The king had these things carried into the castle for him during the day, and when the night was drawing near, the youth went up and made himself a bright fire in one of the rooms. He placed the cutting board and the knife beside it, sat himself by the turning lathe. "Ah, if I could but shudder," said he, "but I shall not learn it here either." Toward the midnight, he was about to poke his fire, and as he was blowing it, something cried suddenly from one corner, "Ah, Mal, how cold we are!" "You simpletons," cried he, "what are you crying about? If you are cold, come and take a seat by the fire and warm yourselves." And when he had said that, 2 great black cats came up with one tremendous leap, sat down on each side of him, and looked savagely at him with fiery eyes. After a short time, when they had warmed themselves, they replied, "Comrade, shall we have a game at cards?" "Why not?" said the youth. "But show me your paws." They stretched out their paws. "Oh," said he, "what long nails you have! Wait. I must first cut them for you." Thereupon he seized them by the throats, placed them on the cutting board, and screwed their feet fast. "Look, I have looked at your fingers," said he, "and my fancy for card-playing has gone." He struck them dead and threw them out into the water. But when he made away with these 2, and was about to sit down again by his fire, out from every hole and corner came black cats and dogs with red-hot chains. And the more and more of them came until he could no longer stir, and they yelled horribly, and they got on his fire and pulled it to pieces, and tried to put it out. He watched them for a while quietly, but at last, when they were going too far, he seized his cutting knife and cried, "Away with ye, vermin!" and began to cut them down. Part of them ran away, the others he had killed and threw out into the fish pond. When he came back, he fanned the embers of his fire and warmed himself. As he thus sat, his eyes would keep open no longer, and he felt a deep desire to sleep. Then he looked around and saw a great bed in the corner. "That is the very thing for me," said he, and got to it. When he was about to shut his eyes, however, the bed began to move of its own accord, and went over the whole castle. "That's right," he said, "but go faster." Then the bed rolled as if 6 horses were harnessed to it, and up and down and over the thresholds and steps. But suddenly, hop, hop, it turned over upside down and lay on him like a mountain. But he threw one of the quilts and pillows up in the air, and got out and said, "Now anyone who likes may drive," and lay down by his fire, and slept until it was day. In the morning the king came. When he saw the youth lying there on the ground, he thought the evil spirits had killed him, and was dead. Then said he, "After all, it is a pity. He is a handsome man." The youth heard it, got up and said, "It has not come to that yet." The king was astonished, but very glad, and asked how he had fared. "Very well indeed," answered he. "One night is past, you 2 others will get over likewise." Then he went to the innkeeper, who opened his eyes very wide, and said, "I never expected to see thee alive again. Hast thou learnt how to shudder yet?" "No," said he, "it is all in vain. If someone would but tell me." Second night he went up to the old castle, sat down by the fire, and once more began his old song. "If I could but shudder, if I could but shudder." When midnight came, an uproar and the noise of tumbling was heard. At first it was low, grew louder and louder, and it was quiet for a while. And at length, with a loud scream, half a man came down the chimney and fell before him. "Oh!" he cried, "another half belongs to this." This is too little. Then the uproar began again. It was roaring and howling, and the other half fell down likewise. Wait, said he, I will just blow up the fire a little for thee. When he had done that and looked around again, the two pieces were joined together. That frightful man was sitting in their place. That is no part of our bargain, said the bench is mine. The man wanted to push him away. The youth, however, would not allow that. Thrust him off with all his strength, seated himself again in his own place. Then still more men fell down, one after the other. He brought 9 dead men's legs and 2 skulls, and set them up and played at 9-pins with them. The youth also wanted to play and said, Hark you, can I join you? Yes, if thou hast money. Money enough, replied he, but your balls are not quite round. He then took the skulls and put them in the lathe and turned until they were round. There now, they will roll better, said he. Hurrah! Now it goes merrily. He played with them and lost some of his money, but when it struck 12, everything finished. He lay down and quietly fell asleep. The next morning the king came to inquire after him. Well, how was it you fared with you this time? Asked he. I have been playing at 9-pins, answered he, and I have lost a couple of farthings. Hast thou not shuddered then? Huh? What? Said he. I have made merry. If I did but know what it was to shudder. The third night he sat down again on his bench and said quite sadly, Oh, if I could but shudder. When it grew late, 6 tall men came in and brought a coffin. Then said he, Ha ha! That is certainly my little cousin, who died only a few days ago. And he beckoned with his finger and cried, Come, little cousin, come. They placed the coffin on the ground, but he went to it and took the lid off, and a dead man lay therein. Felt his face, but it was cold as ice. Stop, said he, I will warm thee a little, and went to the fire and warmed his hand and placed it on the dead man's face. It still remained cold. He then took him out and sat him down by the fire, laid him against his breast, and rubbed him with his arm so that the blood might circulate again. As this did no good, he thought to himself, when 2 people lie in a bed together, they warm each other, so he carried him to bed, covered him over, and lay down by him. After a short time, the dead man became warm too, and began to move. The youth said the youth, See, little cousin, have I not warmed thee? The dead man, however, got up and cried, Now I will strangle thee! What? Said he, Is that the way thou thankest me? Thou shalt go once more into thy coffin. And he took him up, threw him in, and shut the lid. This is just comedic. What is going on? Good God. Never read this one. Oh, this man is a mighty, mighty man, isn't he? A mind of steel. Then the 6 men came and carried the coffin away. I cannot manage to shudder, said he. I shall never learn it as long as I live. Then a man entered who was taller than all the others and looked terrible. He was old, however, and had a long white beard. It was me, was it? I've entered the story. Thou wretch, cried he, thou shalt soon learn what it is to shudder, for you shalt die. Not so fast, replied the youth. If I am to die, I will have a say in it. I will soon seize thee, said the fiend. Softly, softly, do not talk so big. I am as strong as thou art, and perhaps even stronger. We shall see, said the old man. If thou art stronger, I will let thee go. Come, we will try. Then he led him by dark passages to a smith's forge, took an axe, and with one blow struck an anvil into the ground. I can do better than that, said the youth, and went to the other anvil. The old man placed himself near and wanted to look on, as his white beard hung down. The youth then seized the axe and split the anvil with a single blow, and struck the old man's beard with it. Now I have thee, said the youth. Now it is thou who will have to die. He then seized an iron bar and beat the old man till he moaned and entreated him to stop, and he would give him great riches. The youth drew out the axe and let him go. The old man led him into the castle. And a seller showed him 3 chests full of gold. "Of these," said he, "one is for the poor, the other for the king, and the third is thine." In the meantime it struck 12. The spirit disappeared. The youth, therefore, was left in darkness. "I shall still be able to find my way out," said he, and felt about. "I shall be able to find my way out." Found his way to his room, and slept there by his fire. The next morning the king came and said, Now thou must have learnt what shuddering is." "No," he answered. "What can it be? My dead cousin was here, and a bearded man came and showed me a great deal of money down below, but no one told me how it was to shudder." "Then," said the king, "thou hast delivered the castle, and thou shalt marry my daughter." "That is all very well," said he. "I still don't know what it is to shudder." The gold was brought up, and the wedding was celebrated. But whosoever much the young king loved his wife, and however happy he was, he still always said, "If I could but shudder, if I could but shudder." And at last she was angry at this. Her waiting maid said, "I will find a cure for him. He shall soon learn what it is to shudder." He went out to the stream which flowed through the garden, and had a whole bucket full of gudgeons brought to her. At night, when the young king was sleeping, his wife was to draw the clothes off him and empty the bucket full of cold water of the gudgeons over him, so that little fishes would sprawl about. And when this was done, he woke up and cried, "Oh, what makes me shudder so? What makes me shudder so, dear wife? Ah! Now I know what it is to shudder." And scene. In the end. What in God's good name was that? What in all things that are holy was that story? I forget there were some strange stories in the Grimm fairy tales, but that was stranger than most. It reminds me of a comedy, doesn't it? I feel like I should have read it a bit more comedically. That fellow... Imagine the ghost of Christmas past, A Christmas Tale, or was it? Imagine if old Scrooge acted like that. A Christmas Carol, that's it. Imagine if the fellow from A Christmas Carol acted like that. Every time the spirits turn up, he's like, "Oh, what is this? Oh, bad. You don't know. Nobody's telling me how to shudder." Man became a king because he couldn't get scared. I suppose it leaves up to the interpretation whether he's just very stupid and can't get scared because he just doesn't understand. In the end, I don't think he ever really learns how to shudder in the way he's expected to. But he did earn his money. Father's probably awfully annoyed that he disowned him, ain't he? That was a story indeed. Oh, and I did see them while I was reading, but it seems Panda's drifted off to sleep. Quite the long tale that one. It was bizarre. It was funny. Oh, that's my dead cousin. Imagine that. Imagine just sitting there lying in your bed in this haunted castle, and somebody wanders in with your dead cousin. Also, what was this fellow's obsession with warming up dead bodies? Like he doesn't have a concept of death. Good, good, good. That was the story of the youth who went forth to learn what fear was. I don't think he ever did. What a good one. These are all about the same length. Anyone have any stories that they remember from their youth that I could perhaps read a bit of? Calmly and smoothly. Because I will otherwise keep reading various... perhaps I'll look for some famous ones that everyone would know the Disney-fied version of. Oh, look, here's Little Red Riding Hood. What was this one? Oh, it's not too bad. Alright, let's read old Little Red Riding Hood, shall we? The famous tale. Once on a time, there was a sweet little girl. Everyone who saw her liked her. Most of all, her grandmother did not know what it was to give the child next. Once she gave her a little cap made of red velvet, because it suited her so well, and she wanted to wear it all the time. She came to be known as Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Riding Hood. Here is a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother. She is sick and weak, and they will do her well. Wow. Mind your manners, and give her my greeting. Behave yourself along the way, and do not leave the path. You might fall down and break the glass, and there will be nothing for your sick grandmother." Goodness. Didn't know wine was such a cure-all. We had the panacea all along. A bottle of Shiraz. Little Red Riding Hood promised her to obey her mother. Grandmother lived out in the woods, a half-hour from the village. When Little Red Riding Hood entered, a wolf came up to her. She did not know what a wicked animal he was, and was not afraid of him. "Good day to you, Little Red Riding Hood." "Thank you." "Where are you going so early, Little Red Riding Hood?" "To grandmother's." "And what are you carrying under your apron?" "Grandmother is sick and weak. I am taking her some cake and wine. We baked them yesterday, and they should give her strength." Little Red Riding Hood, just where does your grandmother live?" "The house is a good quarter-hour from here in the woods. We live under 3 large oak trees. There's a hedge of hazels in the bushes there. You must know the place," said Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf thought to himself, "Now there is a tasty bite for me. Just how are you going to catch her?" Then he said, "Listen, Little Red Riding Hood, haven't you seen the beautiful flowers that are blossoming in the woods? Why don't you come and take a look? I believe you can hear how beautifully the birds are singing, walking along as though you were on your way to school in the village. Very beautiful these in the woods." Little Red Riding Hood opened her eyes, sunlight breaking through the trees. Now the ground was covered in beautiful flowers. She thought, "Why take a bouquet to Grandma? Very pleased. Anyway, it is still early, and I'll be home on time." She ran off into the woods, looking for flowers. Every time she picked one, she thought she could see another, even more beautiful one in the woods away off. She ran after it, going further into the woods. The wolf ran straight to the grandmother's house and knocked on the door. "Who's there?" "Little Red Riding Hood. I'm bringing you some wine. Open the door for me." "Oh, just press the latch," called out the grandma. "I'm too weak to get up." The wolf pressed the latch, and the door opened. Stepped inside, went straight to the grandmother's bed, ate her up. He then took her clothes, put them on, put on a cap on his head, got into her bed, and pulled the curtains shut. Little Red Riding Hood had run after flowers and did not continue on her way to her grandmother's until she had gathered all she could carry. When she arrived, she found, to her surprise, that the door was open. She walked past the parlor, and everything looked so strange that she thought, "Oh my God, why am I so afraid? I usually get at grandmother's." She then went to the bed and pulled back the curtains. Grandmother was lying there with her cap pulled down over her face, looking very strange. "Mother, big ears you have. All the better to hear you with." "Oh, Grandma, what big eyes you have." "All the better to see you with." "Grandmother, big hands. All the better to grab you with. Oh, grandmother, what a horribly big mouth you have. All the better to eat you with. And with that, he jumped out of the bed, and on top of poor little Riding Hood, ate her up. As soon as the wolf had finished his tasty bite, he climbed back into bed, fell asleep, and began to snore very loudly. The huntsman was just passing by. He thought it strange that the old woman was snoring so loudly. He decided to take a look. Yes, Milk and Banana. I see that your mind hasn't left the gutter right now. Good. Yes, gutter. I'm aware of the implications of such a phrase, but this is about 200 years old, not written in the last 20 years. How was I? Ah, yes. Stepped inside, and within the bed lay the wolf that he had been hunting for such a long time. He has eaten the grandmother, but perhaps she can still be saved. I won't shoot him, thought the huntsman, so he took a pair of scissors and cut open his belly. He only had a few strokes when he saw a little red cap shining through. He cut a little more, and the girl jumped out and cried, "Oh, I was so frightened. It was so dark inside my body." And then came the grandmother out alive and well. Then Little Red Riding Hood fetched some very large and heavy stones. They filled the wolf's body with them, and when he woke and tried to run away, the stones were so heavy, he fell down dead. The three of them were happy. The huntsman took the wolf's belt, the grandmother ate the cake, and drank the wine that Little Red Riding Hood had brought. And Little Red Riding Hood thought to herself, "As long as I live, I will never leave the path and run off into the woods by myself if Mother tells me not." Oh, there's more. There's more. They tell also. There's an extra tale, a PS perhaps. Yes. Yes, Little Red Riding Hood DLC. I didn't realize there was an extra part. They also tell how Little Red Riding Hood was taking some baked things to her grandmother another time, when a other wolf spoke to her and wanted her to leave the path. But Little Red Riding Hood took care and went straight to her grandmother's. He told her that she had seen the wolf, that he had wished her a good day, but had stared at her in a wicked manner. No. Though it does sound a bit more direct about the stranger danger sort of thing. Wicked manner. If he had been on a public road, he said. If on a public road, he would have eaten me up, said she. Come, good grandmother. Let's lock the door so we can't get in. Soon afterward, the wolf knocked on the door and called out, "Open up, grandmother. This is Little Red Riding Hood. I am bringing you some baked things." They remained silent and did not open the door. The wicked one walked around the house several times and finally jumped into the roof. He wanted to wait until Little Red Riding Hood went home that evening. Then he followed her and would eat her up in the darkness. But the grandmother saw what he was up to. There was a large stone through in the front of the house. "Fetch a bucket, Little Riding Hood," she said. "Yesterday I cooked some sausage. Carry the water that I boiled them with to the trough." Little Red Riding Hood carried the water until the large trough was filled. The smell of sausage arose into the wolf's nose. He sniffed and looked down, stretching his neck so long that he could no longer hold himself, and began to slide. He slid off the roof, fell into the trough, and drowned. And Little Red Riding Hood returned home happily and safely. Goodness, that last part. And that's the end of Little Red Riding Hood. What a nice story. That last part, it does feel awfully direct now. I read it again. About when you pointed out the kinkiness, as you said, of it, the ate her up part, it just made me think. It really is a cautionary tale about that sort of thing. I wouldn't say it's about a robber. Doesn't it feel almost allegorical for you know, that sort of unwanted, intimate interaction. I'm not going to say the actual word, because I know it's not very well regarded on the YouTube little thing. Especially that second part feels a lot more like going through a dark alley and meeting a fellow who goes, I'm gonna follow you home, and well, I'm gonna have some fun, you're not going to. Ooh, it's quite frightening, isn't it? Brings a chill up your spine. Maybe I should have read that one on October 31st. Goodness gracious. Just chilling. I suppose you have to warn people of that sort of thing. Even back 200 years ago. It certainly does feel like that, doesn't it? Now it's been put into perspective by Milk and Banana. It certainly does feel like a warning tale. Yes, they do tend to be more dark, but this one feels so specifically more about... Doesn't it feel so much more about... Not murder, it doesn't feel about murder or robbery, doesn't it feel more about... Unwanted intimate interactions, is what I'm going to use as my phrase. Forcible intimate interactions. What it feels like, doesn't it? I don't know, maybe you've just primed me for it. But it's funny how that one ends. No one ever talks about the huntsman and the tales you heard when I was younger. I don't think I ever heard it when... They never talk about the huntsman coming along and performing open, like, bowel surgery on the bloody wolf while he was still asleep. Good God. Man really sleeps like a rock. Man sleeps like that wolf sleeps like the dead. Sleeps like the dead. Imagine being able to be... You'd never have to pay for an anesthesiologist if everyone was like that when they went to sleep. Go to sleep? Okay, do the surgery now while he's asleep. Fill his stomach with rocks. Oh, that is bizarre. Good. Now, any more famous grim fairy tales you want to hear the version of? Perhaps we'll read much more some lighter things. Do you have any bedtime stories or tales or such that you'd like me to read? You tell me. Otherwise, I'll go find another famous one, just so we can listen to it. Read Hansel and Gretel, classic. Or maybe Jack and the... I don't think that's a grim one, is it? Yes, I don't think that. The original Mermaid is pretty dark. I wonder how many. There are 200. Yes. Depends how long it is, too. Find it. I'm using the computer version. Mermaid. Hans Christian Andersen. How long is it? Ooh, wow, that is quite. This very, very long story. Perhaps a bit long for today, unfortunately. Though it is very dark from what I've heard. Most are very, very dark. Hansel and Gretel? Classic. Sorry, just trying to read some of these. Wow, they have very basic, they have some very good names in this. The wishing table, the gold ass, and the cudgel in the sack. That sounds very fun. That one. So we'll be able to get through one or two more, probably. Read the Emperor's new clothes. Let's read that one. The Emperor's New Suit by Hans Christian Andersen. Many years ago lived an emperor who thought so much of his new clothes that he spent all his money in order to obtain them. His only ambition was to always be well dressed. He did not care for his soldiers, and the theatre did not amuse him. The only thing, in fact, he thought anything of was to drive out and show out a new suit of clothes. He had a coat for every hour of the day, and as one would say of the king, he is in his cabinet. So one could say of him, the emperor is in his dressing room. The great city where he resided was very gay. Every day, many strangers from all parts of the globe arrived. One day, two swindlers They made people believe that they were weavers, and declared they could manufacture the finest cloth to be imagined. Colors and patterns, they said, were not only exceptionally beautiful, but the clothes made of their material possessed a wonderful quality of being invisible to any man who was unfit for his office or unpardonably stupid. That must be a wonderful cloth, thought the emperor. If I were to be dressed in such a suit made of this cloth, I should be able to find out which of my men in my empire were unfit for their places. I could distinguish the clever. I must have this cloth woven for me, without delay. And he gave a large sum of money to the swindlers, in advance, and that they should set to work without any loss of time. Set up two looms, and pretended to be very hard at work. But they did nothing whatever on the looms. They asked for the finest silk and the most precious gold cloth. They did away with, and worked at the empty looms till late. I should very much like to know how they are getting on with the cloth, thought the emperor. He felt rather uneasy when he remembered that he who was not fit for his office could not see it. Personally, he was of the opinion that he had nothing to fear. Yet he thought it was advisable to send everybody else first to see how matters stood. Everyone in town knew what a remarkable quality this stuff possessed. They were all anxious how bad or stupid their neighbours were. I shall send my honest old minister to the weeds, thought he. He can judge best how the stuff looks, for he is intelligent. No one really understands his office better than he. The good old minister went to the room where the swindlers sat before the empty looms. Heavens preserve us, he thought. I opened his eyes wide. I cannot say. But he did not say so. Both swindlers requested him to come near, asked him if he did not admire the exquisite pattern and the beautiful colours putting out in the looms. The poor old minister tried his very best. But there was nothing to be seen. Oh dear, he thought. Can I be so stupid? I should have never thought so, and nobody must know it. Possible that I am not fit for it. I cannot say that I was unable to see the cloth. Now, have you got nothing to say? Said one of the swindlers, while he pretended to be busily weaving. Oh, it is very pretty, exceedingly beautiful, replied the old minister, looking through his blouse. What pattern, what beautiful colours. I shall tell the emperor that I like the cloth very much. Be pleased to hear that, said he. Described to him the colours and explained the curious pattern. The old minister listened attentively that he might relate to the emperor what they had said. And so he did. Now the swindlers asked for more money, more silk, and gold cloth, which they required for weaving. They kept everything to themselves, and not a thread came near the loom, but they continued, as hitherto, to work at the empty looms. Soon after, the emperor sent another honest courtier, the weavers, to see how they were getting on. The cloth was nearly finished. The old minister, he looked and looked, but could not see anything, as if there was nothing to be seen. Is it not beautiful, a beautiful piece of cloth? Asked the two swindlers, showing him and explaining the magnificence. which, however, did not exist. "I am not stupid," said the man. "It is therefore my good appointment for which I am not fit. It is very strange, but I must not let anyone know it." And he praised the cloth. He did not see, and expressed his joy at the beautiful colours, fine pattern. "It is very excellent," said to the emperor. Everyone in the whole town talked about the precious. At last, the empress wanted to see it for himself while it was still on the loom. With a number of courtiers, including the two who had already been there, he went to the two clever swindlers, who now worked as hard as they could, without using any thread. "Is it not magnificent?" said the old two statesmen who had been there before. "Your Majesty must admire the colours and pattern." And as they pointed to the empty looms, for they imagined the others could see the cloth. "What is this?" thought the emperor. "It's terrible. Am I stupid? Am I unfit to be emperor? Indeed, be the most dreadful thing that could happen to me." "Really," he said, turning to the weavers, "your cloth is the most great." And nodding contentedly, he looked at the emperor. He did not like to say that he saw. All his attendants who were with him looked and looked, and although they couldn't see anything more than the others, they said, "The emperor, it is very beautiful," and all advised him to wear the new magnificent cloth at a great procession which was soon to take place. "Magnificent, beautiful, excellent," one heard them say. Everyone was saying delight, and the emperor was appointed the two swindlers as imperial court thieves. The whole night previous to the day on which the procession was to take place, the swindlers pretended to work, and burned more than 16 candles. We should see that they were busy to finish. They pretended to take cloth from the loom and work it in the air with big scissors, sew it with needles, without thread, and said at last, "The emperor's new suit is ready now." The emperor and all his barons then came to the hall. The swindlers held their arms as if they held something in their hands and said, "These are the trousers, these are the coat, and here is the cloak," and so on and so forth. They are as light as cobweb. One must feel as if they had nothing at all upon the body. It is just the beauty, that is just the beauty. "Indeed," said all the courtiers, but they could not see anything. There was nothing to be seen. "Does it please your Majesty how ungraciously undress," said the "that we may assist your Majesty in putting on the new suit before the large looking-glass." The emperor undressed, and the swindlers pretended to put the new suit upon. One piece. The emperor looked into himself in the glass from every side. How well they looked! How well they fit! Oh, what beautiful pattern! What fine color! That is a magnificent suit of clothes. And the master of the ceremonies announced that the bearers of the canopy, carried in the procession, were ready. "I am ready," said the emperor. "Does not my suit fit me marvelously?" And he turned once more to the looking-glass, that people should think he admires his garments. Chamberlains, who were carrying the train, stretched their hands to the ground as if they lifted up a train, and pretended to hold something in their hands. They did not like the people to know that they could not see anything. The emperor marched in the procession under the beautiful canopy, and all who saw him in the street out of the windows exclaimed, "Indeed, the emperor's new suit is incomparable. What a long train he has! How well it fits him!" Nobody wished to know that he saw. Wished others to know that he saw nothing, for it would then mean he's unfit for his office. Never the emperor's clothes were more admired. But he has nothing on at all," said a little child at last. "Good heavens! Listen to the voice of an innocent child," said the father. And one whispered to the other of what the child had said. "But he has nothing on at all," at last cried the whole people. That made a deep impression upon the emperor, for it seemed to him they were right, but he thought to himself, "Now I must bear it to the end." The chamberlains walked in with still greater dignity, as if they carried the train, which did not exist. That is very good. Well, did you see the emperor's new clothes, old Milk and Banana? Were you all able to see the Emperor's clothes, all those in chat? Very good. That is the original. It's quite the story, isn't it? About the two swindlers. I remember that one. I read it as a young man quite a while ago. It was quite interesting. Very fun, though. I think. And now it's such a cultural touchstone, the Emperor's new clothes. Oh, good afternoon for me, good evening for you, Tiberian. Unusual to see you on Tuesday. We just finished reading The Emperor's New Clothes. Having a bit of a giggle, a bit of a laugh at old Emperor's new suit. Yes, lunch at work. Yes, fair enough. I decided to do a bit later today so I could be a bit more of a bedtime stream. I've been trying to speak quietly, but I keep getting excited while reading and projecting more. So, who knows if it's working out. Maybe I should read Hansel and Gretel. Let us see. Let's go a short one. The Princess and the Pea, another Hans Christian Andersen one. Once upon a time, there was a prince who wanted to marry a princess. But she was wool to have a... Oh, goodness. But she would have to be a real princess. Travelled all over the world. Would have, goodness. Spelled very bizarrely, it's W-O-L. I believe it was supposed to be would. Try that again. Once upon a time, there was a prince who wanted to marry a princess. She would have to be a real princess. He travelled all over the world to find one, but nowhere could he get what he wanted. Goodness, titled. There were princesses enough, but it was difficult to find out whether they were the real ones. There was always something about them that was not as it should be. So he came to home again and was sad, for he would have liked very much to have a real princess. God, this is a crying story. One evening, a terrible storm came on. There was thunder and lightning, and the rain poured down on torrents. Knocking was heard at the city gate, and the old king went to open. It was a princess standing there at the front gate. Good gracious, what a sight the rain and wind had made her look. The water ran down from her hair and clothes. It ran down under the toes of her shoes and out at the heels. And yet she said, "She's a real princess." Well, we'll soon find that out, thought the old queen. But she said nothing, went into the bedroom, took all the bedding off the bedstead, and laid a pea at the bottom. Then took mattresses, laid them on the pea. And then 20 eider-down beds on top of the mattresses. On this the princess had to lie all night. In the morning, she was asked how she slept. Oh, very badly, she said. I scarcely closed my eyes all night. Heaven only knows what was in the bed. I was lying on so hard that I am black and blue all over my body. It's horrible. Now they knew she was a real princess. She had felt the pea right through the 20 messages, and the 20 eider-down beds. Nobody but a real princess could be as sensitive as that. So the prince took her for his wife, for now he knew he had a real princess, and the pea was put in a museum, where it still may be seen, if no one has stolen it. Now there is a true story. That is what it ends with. It says, there, that is a true story. Ah. Yes. That's certainly something to be written these days. The prince was awfully bloody entitled, wasn't he? Most men out there would have just been happy enough. One of those thinker's stories. Most princes out there would have just been happy with just a bloody egg. These are translated. Yes, well, Hans Christian Andersen. Thinkin and Thonkin. Yes. Probably these would have been translated. Yes. I believe he's Danish. So, Hans Christian Andersen. Danish. Ooh, Godfather Death. That sounds fun. But yes, fairly entitled little prince, isn't he? What nationality are you, by the way? I am Australian. Old milk and banana. I don't really mention it much, but I do talk about Australia a lot. What did you think I was? Always curious. One of the stories I was thinking I was going to read today was, speaking of Australian, was The Adventures of Blinky Bill. I don't know why I track towards so many Aussies. I have now like 10 Aussie friends. Yeah, well, we're shockingly common. We come out of the woodwork whenever you mention Australia. And I'd certainly say Australia has a particular set of humour that you probably find, or lilt to them. Adventures of Blinky Bill. Blinky Bill is a koala bear who was born for big adventures. Australian classic. Aussies are very friendly. Wow. We all hope to be. Just don't hang out at a train station at 3 AM. Because I think that's the place where unfriendly Aussies hang out. Don't go to old Manly Station and... Is there a Manly Station? One of the Sydney stations. Get mugged. Dangerous. They'll just sit there going, "Oh mate, give us a ciggy, brah." And then when you say no, they'll be like, "Yeah, then give us your wallet." Aussie Kings were the kings of sheet posting. Perhaps we are. I don't know if I'm that good at it, but I have seen quite a few Australians who are very good at that kind of comedy. But granted, I have almost been mugged by 2 Australians, but I heard that Aussies have to deal with a ton of animals, but my friend said it's normally just in cities. But I always see videos of big ass spiders and how. Well, I may have had an unusual experience. I've lived quite rural. Yes, in big cities you tend not to have that. You have your big huntsmen still. If you're in the big city, huntsmen are still quite a piece. You'll still find them. Cockroaches are bloody huge, and you'll find plenty of those in the city. Mice and rats don't get that big in the city, though. Mostly the cockroaches and spiders that are fairly big, even in the city. That in the country, yes. I've been pissed on by possums. Be careful if possums get into your roof, because they will make a nest up there and start pissing all over the place, and it'll leak through the ceiling. Start dripping in your face. It's a very classic Australian thing. Especially when you're rural. I've had huntsmans and red belly blacks. Well, red belly blacks eat snakes. Yeah, I have almost run over them with my bicycle. Almost been bitten by a carpet snake. That was fun. Do be careful. And one time a huntsman crawled out of my jacket. After I'd been sitting... Black widows. What is Australia's most... I think the scary one in Australia is the funnel web. I don't think we have black widows. We have redbacks. That was the one I was trying to say before. I have had a redback. I've had a white tip, a huntsman crawl out of jackets separately from one another. We call wolf spiders. Yes, the funnel web is the most terrifying, but there are a lot of them. I believe the New South Wales native funnel web. I just searched for funnel web. I regret. Check out the redback spiders and the mouse spiders. Quite fun. Got trapdoor spiders. They're pretty good. White-tailed spiders are scary. But I don't know if they actually... Are they the ones in necrotizing? I don't know. But yes, funnel webs. Quite the terrifying little bastards. But in the end, most spiders, as with all dangerous animals, they are poisonous in theory. But my sister's been bitten by a redback. Her foot went purple, but... How about another story? Okay, please, thanks. And I'm not even onto snakes yet. Why are you so scared? Why are you so worried? I haven't even talked about the inland taipan. Now, would you rather Godfather Death or Rapunzel? You always carry around a knife in case you have to fend off some wildlife? Well, if I was still on a farm, yes, I probably would, but not in the city. And anyway, bloody knife's gonna not help you when a kangaroo decides it's got a problem with you, mate. That's just a fist fight you've got to have. They're so muscular your knife would probably snap off when you tried to stab him in the chest. Rapunzel, I think, was dark in the original one. Well, how about we read it then? A fairy tale written by the Brothers Grimm, translated from German. Rapunzel. Once there lived a man and his wife, who had long wished for a child but in vain. Now, there was at the back of their house a little window, which overlooked a beautiful garden full of the finest vegetables and flowers. But there was a high wall around it, and no one ventured into it, for it belonged to a witch of great might, and of whom all the world was afraid. One day the wife was standing at the window, looking into the garden. She saw a bed filled with the finest rampion that looked so fresh and green. She began to wish for some, and at length she longed for it greatly. It went on for days. As she knew she could not get the rampion, she pined away, and grew pale and miserable. The man was uneasy and asked, "What is the matter, my dear wife?" "Oh," she answered, "I shall die unless I have some of that rampion, and eat that grows in the garden in the back of our house." The man, who loved his wife very much, thought to himself, "Rather than lose my wife, I will get some rampion, cost what it will." So in the twilight he climbed over the wall and into the witch's garden. He made a salad, picked hastily a handful of rampion, and brought it to his wife. He made a salad of it at once, and ate of it to her heart's content. She liked it so much, and it tasted so good, that the next day she longed for it thrice as much as she had before. If he was to have any rest, the man must climb the wall once more. So he went into the twilight again, and as he was climbing the wall back, he saw, all at once, the witch standing before him, and was terribly frightened, as she cried with angry eyes, "How dare thee climb over my garden like a thief, and steal my rampion? It shall be the worst for thee." "Oh," answered he, "be merciful rather than just. I have only done it through necessity. My wife saw your rampion out the window, became possessed with longing so great that she would have died if she could not have some to eat." The witch then said, "If it is all as you say, you may have as much rampion as you like, on one condition. The child that will come into the world must be given to me. It shall go well with the child, and I will care for it like a mother." In his distress of mind, the man promised everything. Second tale that's happened. And when the time came, the child was born, and the witch appeared, and, giving the child the name Rapunzel, getting into the stream, couple stackies. Probably cursed rampion. Classic problem. Gotta make sure your cabbages aren't cursed, just in case they're forcing you to buy from a multinational corporation again and again. Named the child of Rapunzel, which was the same as rampion. She then took it away with her, Rapunzel was the most beautiful child in the world. When she was 12 years old, the witch shut her up in a tower in the midst of a wood, and it had neither steps nor a door, only a small window above. When the witch wished to be let in, stand below and cry, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel had beautiful long hair that shone like gold. When she heard the voice of the witch, she would undo the fastening up in the window and unbind the plaits of her hair and let down 20 ells below, and the witch would climb up by it. After they had lived thus a few years, it happened that the king's son was riding through the wood, and he came to the tower. And as he was drawing near, he heard a voice singing so sweetly. He stood still and listened. It was Rapunzel in her loneliness, trying to pass away the time with sweet song. The king's son wished to go into her, and sought a door to the tower, but there was none. So he rode home. The song had entered into his heart, and every day he went to the wood and listened. Once he was standing there under a tree. He saw the witch come up and listened while she called out, "Oh, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." He then saw how Rapunzel let down her long tresses, and how the witch climbed up by it and went into her. He said to himself, "Since that is the ladder, I will climb it and seek my fortune." And the next day, as soon as it began to grow dusk, he went to the tower and cried, "Oh, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And she let down her hair, and the king's son climbed up by it. Rapunzel was greatly terrified when she saw the man had come to her, for she had never seen one before. The king's son began speaking so kindly to her, told her how her singing had entered into her, so that he may have no peace until he had seen her himself. Then Rapunzel forgot her terror, and asked when he asked her to take him, and when he asked her to take him for her husband, and she saw that he was the young and beautiful. She thought to herself, "I certainly much like him better than my old mother Gothel," and put her hand into his hand. She said, "I would willingly go with thee, but I do not know how I shall get out. When thou comest, bring each time a silken robe, and I will make a ladder. When it is quite ready, I will go down by it, out of the tower, and thou shalt take me away on thine horse." They agreed they should come to her every evening, as the woman came in the day. The witch knew nothing of this until Rapunzel said to her unwittingly, "Mother Gothel, how is it that you climb so slowly? And the king's son is with me in a moment." "Oh, wicked child!" cried the witch. "What is this I hear? I have thought I had hidden thee from all the world, and thou hast betrayed me." In anger she seized Rapunzel by her beautiful hair, and struck her several times with her left hand, grasping a pair of shears with her right. Snip snap, the beautiful locks lay on the ground. She was so hard-hearted that she took Rapunzel and put her in a waste and desert place, where she would live in great woe and misery. The same day in which she took Rapunzel away, she went back to the tower in the evening, and made fast the severed locks of hair to the window hasp. And the king's son came and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." She let down the hair, and the king climbed up, but instead of his dearest Rapunzel, he found the witch looking at him with the wicked, glittering eyes. "Aha!" cried she, mocking him. "You came for your darling, but the sweet bird sits no longer in the nest, and sings no more. The cat has got her, and will scratch your eyes out as well. Rapunzel is lost to you, and you will see her no more." The king's son was beside himself with grief, and in his agony he sprung for the tower, and escaped with his life. The thorns on which he fell put out his eyes. He wandered blind through the wood, eating nothing but roots roots and berries, and doing nothing but lament and weep for the loss of his dearest wife. So he wandered for several years in misery, until at last he came to the deserted place where Rapunzel lived with her twin children that she had borne, a boy and a girl. At first he heard the voice that he thought he knew, and when he reached the place from which he seemed to come, Rapunzel knew him. She fell upon his neck and wept, and when her tears touched his eyes, they became clear again, and he could see them as well as ever. He took her to his kingdom,
where they were received with great joy, and they lived long and happily ever after. Well, that was certainly a lot more uplifting at the end there. Bit of a sudden retcon at the end. Good God, yes. Jumped out of the tower and fell into some thorns and lost his bloody eyes. Exciting. Action-packed. What a charming story. Yes. There's something about those old stories. You did a number on this one. Wow. Imagine. I got to go. See you later. Well, see you. Thank you for coming. Yes, they did a bit of a strange one this one, didn't they? But they did keep the healing powers of Rapunzel. Strangely enough. My water bottle. Give me a moment. Very good. Good God. Imagine being so desperate for your significant other. And also, imagine meeting the first man in your life and going, yeah, sure, I'll marry you. I have no idea what that means, but I'll marry you. And clearly, they didn't just hang out up in that tower of theirs. They did as all young and beautiful people do. Because she bore twins. So clearly, the witch wasn't just upset by the fact that the king's son was always there. And I suppose that's why the king's son was going up the tower so bloody quickly, don't you think? I think we've solved the mystery of why Gothel goes up so slowly, but the king's son's up there quickly. He had an extra arm. Well, it wasn't one that grabbed things. But it was one that was a great motivator. Greatest motivator for a young man, that's for sure. Love, of course, yeah. True and endearing and reciprocal love, that's of course what I'm referring to. Nothing else? Get your head out of the gutter. Yes. True love, of course. That was what was motivating him. Nothing else. The twins were just a bonus. Also, he didn't do anything to the witch. The witch is still out there. Did he? Did he kill the witch? No. She just threw her into the middle of a desert. Scared him off. What was her endgame? And why the hell did she ask for somebody's firstborn in exchange for some bloody vegetables? Very strange. Maybe the witch just kind of lived in the Bahamas and changed her life around. Maybe she was like, you know what? Maybe she thought the king's son was dead and went, oh no. All the king's horses and all the king's men are going to come after me. I've got to emigrate to a different country and change my name. Move all my money into a bank account in a Panama bank account. Disappear. Brought onto a Swiss bank account and disappear. Go hang out with what was his name? The fellow from Shawshank Redemption. Go live with him. Out on that beach with a boat. Andy Dufresne, that's it. Go live with Andy Dufresne. Holy crap, it's been an hour and 30. An hour 30. Didn't even notice. Yes. It's almost time. I think I'll be going to about... I'll probably be... one more story. We'll probably do one more story and then I'll finish up. That is the case at least. Maybe you should start trying to head to bed, if you're American at least. I don't know what time zone you're sitting in. Are you in America, Milk and Banana? I have quite a few Americans who listen. Philippines, I see. Shame it's not bedtime, eh? Afternoon. Wow, afternoon nap. Oh, let's start with a very grim story. Fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. Godfather Death. Ooh, ominous. And I shall speak this with a serious-looking face. A poor man had 12 children, and had to work day and night in order just to feed them. Thus, when the 13th came into the world, not knowing what to do with this, with it in his need, he ran out onto the highway, intending to ask the first person whom he met to be the godfather. This man has 12 children, and he's worrying, oh no, I cannot feed them, so he has a 13th. I think his problem is he can't keep it in his pants. Good God, have some pragmatism. First person who came his way was our dear God, who was our dear God who already knew what was in his heart, and God said to him, poor man. Let's see, God was. Family planning was not a thing back in the day. Clearly not. Neither was financial planning. Or fiscal responsibility. And he just bloody meets... This is a real godfather. Just bloody met God on the road. First person who came his way was our dear God, who already knew what was in his heart. And God said, poor man, I pity you. I will hold your child at his baptism and care for him, and will make him happy on earth. The man said, who are you? I am God. Then I do not wish to have you as a godfather, said the man. You give to the rich, and let the poor starve. Ooh, communism. Thus spoke the man, for he did not know how wisely God divides out wealth and poverty. Then he turned away from the Lord, and went on his way. The balls on this man. The man met God himself, just casually. And God was like, I'll make your kid the greatest in the world. I will make him live the greatest life. I promise you that. And the guy's like, nah, stuff off, mate. You're a piece of crap, mate. You keep making poor people die. And the rich get richer. Bloody in 120 years, you'll see how that turns out for you, mate. Red Revolution's coming for you, bro. Good God, man. And so he went on his way, after projecting God himself. Good God. Indeed. In fact, bad God, I suppose. Then the devil came to him and said, what are you looking for? Oh, what's the devil say? What are you looking for? If you will take me as your child's godfather, I will give him an abundance of gold, and all the joys of the world as well. The man asked, who are you? I am the devil. Then I do not wish to have you for a godfather, said the man. You deceive mankind and lead them astray. God, he doesn't like the God or the devil. Genuinely, no satisfying this man. At this point, he may as well just throw the kid in a ditch and be done with it. Good God. He went on his way, and then Death, on his withered legs, came walking toward him and said, take me as your child. Take me as your child's godfather. The man asked, who are you? I am Death, who makes all equal. And the man said, you are right. You are the right one. You take away the riches. Take away the rich as well as the poor. Without distinction, you shall be my child's godfather. Death answered, I will make your child rich and famous, for he who has me for a friend cannot fail. The man said, next Sunday is the baptism. Be there on time. Death appeared as he had promised, and served as the godfather in an orderly manner. So surreal. After the boy came of age, his godfather appeared to him one day and asked him to go with him. Took him out into the woods and showed him an herbs there, saying, Now you shall receive your godfather's present. I will turn you into a famous physician. Whenever you are called to a sick person, I will appear to you. If I stand at the sick person's head, you may say with confidence that you can make him well again. Then give him some of this herb, and he will recover. But if you stand at the sick person's feet, he is mine. You must say that he is beyond help, that there is no physician in the world that could save him. But beware of using this herb against my will, or something very bad will happen to you." It was not before long before the young man had become most famous physician in the whole world. People said of him, "He only needs to look at the sick in order to immediately know their condition, whether they will regain their health or are doomed to die." And the people came to him from far and wide, taking him to their sick, and giving him so much money that he soon became a wealthy man. Now it came to the pass that the king became ill, and the physician was summoned, and was to say if recovery were possible. However, when he approached the bed, death was standing at the sick man's feet, and so no herb on earth would be able to help him. "If only I could deceive death for but once," thought the physician. "He will be angry, of course, but I am his godson. He will shut one eye. I will risk it." Therefore he took hold of the sick man and laid him the other way round, so that now death was standing at his head. He then gave the king some of the herb, and he recovered and became healthy again. However, death came to the physician, made a dark and angry face, and threatened him with his finger, and said, "You have betrayed me. I will overlook it, this time because you are my godson. But if you dare do it again, it will cost you your neck, for I will take you yourself away with me." Soon after, the king's daughter became seriously ill. She was his only child, and he cried day and night until his eyes were going blind. He then proclaimed that whosoever rescued her from death should become her husband and inherit the crown. He would have remembered his godfather's warning, but he was so infatuated by the princess's great beauty, the prospect of becoming her husband, that he threw all thoughts to the wind. He did not see death was looking at him angrily, lifting his head into the air, threatening him with his withered fist. Then gave her the herb, and her cheeks immediately turned red, and life stirred into her once again. Death, seeing that he had been cheated out of his property for a second time, approached the physician with long strides and said, "You are finished. Now it is your turn." Death then seized him so firmly with his ice-cold hand that he could not resist, and led him to an underground cavern. There the physician saw how thousands and thousands of candles were burning in endless rows, some large, others medium-sized, others small. Every instant some died out, and others were relit. That little flame seemed to be jumping in constant change. "See," said Death, "these are the life-lights of mankind. The large ones belong to children, the medium-sized ones to married people in their best years. And the others, the small little flames, seem to be jumping the little ones to the old. However, even the children and young people often have tiny candles." "Show me my life-light," said the physician, thinking it would be very large. Death pointed to a little stump that was just threatening to go out, and said, "There, see, there it is." "Oh dear," said the horrified physician, "light a new one for me. It is a favor for me, so I can enjoy my life and become king and have a beautiful princess." "I cannot," said Death. "One must go out before a new one is lighted." "Then set the old one and the new one so I can go on burning after the old one is finished," begged the physician. Death presented that he was going to fulfill his wish, and took hold of a large candle, but desiring revenge, he purposely made a mistake in relighting it. The little piece fell down, went out. The physician immediately fell down to the ground, and he too is now in the hands of Death. Goodness. The end. Goodness gracious. Ugh. Man died just to get with a woman. Hello, Rocky. How are you? Actually, you know about the story. I do know this one too. I forgot it was called Grandfather Death, but I know it once I started reading it. Truly, the man was dedicated to becoming married to a beautiful woman, living as a king. Who says chivalry is dead? This fellow died. This fellow died. Died for a root, he did. Died for a root. And he didn't even get the bloody root. That the woman would very like them very much. Are we reading the infamous Grimm fairy tales? I remember having them as a topic in my dumbing exams. Yes, we are reading them. That's what this stream has been mostly about. We've read a couple of Andersons. You know, the Pea, the Princess and the Pea and the like. Yes, we are reading. We read Someone's Eyes Got Gouged Out. Yes, that was in Rapunzel. The prince's eyes got gouged out by thorns. Good fun. Trying to see if I can find a short one. The short one. Oh, the snow. Ooh. Yeah. My throat is getting quite sore. Oh, the wolf and the man and the wolf and the fox. Wow. Clever Gretel. At the death of the little hen. Gambling Hansel. Goodness, Hansel and Gretel certainly went down the hill. Hansel and Gretel were fine, and then Hansel became addicted to gambling, apparently. Yes, I've been drinking some water throughout. I have been drinking water throughout. Yes. Seems like fun. Let's read Gambling Hansel. Let's see what happened to Hansel and Gretel after their particular tale of surviving against a witch in a gingerbread house. Actually, I do have the Hansel and Gretel one up here. Quite a long one, unfortunately. I have to remember the question. How am I supposed to remember the questions from that exam paper now? I don't know. I don't think you'd want to remember them, would you? It's an exam, after all. Oh yes, it was a gingerbread house. There we are. No, I was just somehow reminded of them. Oh. Read these. Read the story of Clever Gretel and Gambling Hansel. Start with Clever Gretel. There was once a cook named Gretel, who wore shoes with red rosettes, and when she walked out with them on, she turned herself this way and that, and thought, certainly are a pretty girl. And when she thought coming home, she drank, in her gladness of heart, a draught of wine. And as wine excites a desire to eat, she tasted the best of whatever she was cooking, until she was satisfied. Have you read Grimm's until then? I've known about Grimm's until I was very young. The cook must know what the food is like. It came to pass that the master one day said to her, Gretel, there is a guest coming this evening. Prepare me 2 fowls very daintily. I will see to it, master, answered Gretel. She killed 2 fowls, scalded them, plucked them, put them on the pot, toward evening set them before the fire, so that they may roast. Fowls began to turn brown, and were nearly ready. The guest had not yet arrived. Gretel called out to her master, If the guest does not come, I must take the fowls away from the fire, but it will be a sin and a shame if they are not eaten directly, when they are the juiciest. The master said, I will run myself and directly fetch the guest. When the master had turned his back, Gretel laid the spits of the fowls to one side, and said, Standing so long by the fire, I'm hot and thirsty. Who knows when they will come? Meanwhile, I will run to the cellar, take a drink. ran down, set a jug, and said, God bless it to thy use, Grethel. Took a good drink, and took yet another hearty drink. He then went and put the fowls again by the fire, basted them, drove the spit merrily round, but as the roasted meat smelt so good, Grethel thought something might be wrong. It ought to be tasted. She touched it with her finger and said, "Ah, how good fowls are! It certainly is a sin and a shame that they are not eaten." Ran to the window to see if the master was not coming with his guest, but she saw no one, and went back to the fowls and thought, "One wing is burning. Better take it off and eat it." So she cut it off, ate it, and enjoyed it, and when she was done, she thought, the other must go down too, or else the master observed something is missing. When 2 wings were eaten, she went and looked at for her master, and did not see him. Suddenly it called to her. Who knows? He are perhaps not coming at all, and have turned in somewhere. Then she said, Grethel, enjoy yourself. 1 fowl has been cut in 2. Take another drink, and eat it off entirely. When it is eating, you will have some peace. God's kid gifts. So she ran to the cellar again, took an enormous drink, ate up the 1 chicken with great glee. When one of the chickens was swallowed down and her master still did not come, Grethel looked at the other 2 and said, Where one is, the other should be likewise. The 2 go together. What's right for the one is right for the other. I think if I were to take another draught, it would do me no harm. So she took another hearty drink, and let the second chicken rejoin the first. While she was in the best of her eating, the master came and cried, Hurry up! Hasten thee, Grethel! The guest is coming directly after me. Yes, sir, I will soon serve up, answered Grethel. Meantime the master looked at the table that was properly laid, took a great knife, wherewith he was going to carve the chickens, chopped it on the steps. Presently the guest came, and knocked politely and courteously at the house door. Grethel ran and looked to see who was there. When she saw the guest, she put her finger to her lips and said, Hush, hush, get away as quickly as you can. If my master catches you, it will be the worst for you. He certainly did ask you for supper, but his intention is to cut off your 2 ears. Just listen to how he's sharpening the knife for it. The guest heard the sharpening and hurried down the steps as fast as he could. Grethel was not idle. She ran screaming toward the master and cried, You have invited a fine guest. Eh? Why, Grethel, what do you mean by that? Yes, said she. Yes, said she. He has taken the chickens which I was going to serve up off the dish and has run away with them. That's a nice trick, said her master, lamenting the fine chickens. If he had but left me 1, that I could have something remain for me to eat. He called him to the stop, but the guest pretended not to hear. Then ran after him with a knife still in his hand, crying, Just one, meaning the guest should have left him with just 1 chicken, and not take both. The guest, however, thought no otherwise than that he was going to give up 1 of his ears, and ran as if fire were burning underneath him, in order to take them both home with him. Well, well, Grethel, aren't you the manipulator? God, Grethel, terrifying. That is clever little saying. I can't see the lesson of that one, but I suppose Grimm's fairy tales didn't normally have lessons, they were just tales. That is very different. Well, Grethel, I believe, was a very common name, so... But the world ain't more pretty. Well, Little Red Riding Hood's not too different from the actual Red Riding Hood, except for the fact that at the end of the Grimm's fairy tale, a huntsman comes and dissects the wolf and pulls Red Riding Hood and the grandmother out. So... Oh, well, let's see how Gambling Hansel gets on. See the other half of Hansel and Gretel's story. I believe they just both very common names at the time. Once upon a time, there was a man who did nothing but gamble. And for that reason, people never called him anything. Kids feel his name, so wishy-washy. Anything but Gambling Hansel. And as he never ceased to gamble, he played away his house and all that he had. Oh dear, that is really a gambling problem. Maybe this warning is about gambling problems. Now, the very day before his creditors were to take his house from him, came the Lord and St. Peter. Goodness, where is God turning up on these stories casually? And asked him to give the shelter for the night. Then Gambling Handle said, "For my part, you may stay the night, but I cannot give you a bed or anything to eat." So the Lord said he was just to take them in. They themselves would buy something to eat, to which Gambling Handel made no objection. Thereupon St. Peter gave him 3 groschen, and said he was going to the baker's and fetching some bread. The Gambling Hansel went, but when he reached the house where the other gambling vagabonds were gathered together, they, although they had won all he had, greeted him clamorously and said, "Hansel, do come in." "Oh," he said, "want to win 3 groschen too?" On this they would not let him go. Let him go. Distracted. On this they would not let him go, so he went in and played away the 3 groschen. Meanwhile, St. Peter and the Lord were waiting. As he was so long in coming, they set out to meet him. When Gambling Hansel came, however, he pretended that the money had fallen into the gutter, kept raking in about all the while to find it, but our Lord already knew that he had lost it in play. St. Peter again gave him 3 groschen, and now he did not allow himself to be led away once more, but fetched them the loaf. Our Lord then inquired if he had no wine, and he said, "Alack, sir, the casks are all empty." The Lord said he was to go down to the cellar, for the best wine was still there. For a long time he could not believe this, but at length he said, "Well, I will go down. I know there is none there." When he turned the tap, however, lo and behold, the best wine ran out, so he took it to them, and the 2 passed the night there. Early the next day, our Lord told Gambling Hansel that he might beg 3 favours. But Gambling Hansel asked for a pack of cards, which he could win anything, for dice, which would he win everything, for a tree whereupon every kind of fruit would grow, and from which no one had climbed up could descend until he bade them to do so. The Lord gave him all that he had asked, and departed with St. Peter. And now Gambling Hansel at once set about gambling in real earnest, and before long he had gained half the world. Upon this St. Peter said to the Lord, "Lord, this thing must not go on. He will win, and thou lose the whole world. You must send Death to him." When Death appeared, Gambling Hansel had seated himself at the gambling table. And Hansel said, "Hansel, come out for a while." But Hansel said, "Just wait until the game is done, and in the meantime get up into that tree there, and gather a little fruit so we may have something to munch on our way." Thereupon Death climbed up, but when he went to climb down again, he could not, and Gambling Hansel left him up there for 7 years, during which time no one died. So St. Peter said to the Lord, "Lord, this thing must go on, people no longer die, we must go ourselves." And then they went themselves, and the Lord commanded Hansel to let Death down. So Hansel went at once to Death and said, "Come down." Death took him directly and put an end to him. They went away together and came to the next world. And then Gambling Hansel made a straight for the door of heaven and knocked at it. "Who is there?" "Gambling Hansel." "Ah, we have nothing to do with him. Begone." So he went to the door of purgatory and knocked once. "Who is there?" "Gambling Hansel." "Ah, there is quite enough weeping and wailing here without him. Do not want to gamble. Just go away." And he went to the door of hell, and there they let him in. There was, however, no one at home but old Lucifer and the crooked devils who had just been doing their evil work in the world. No sooner Hansel was there than he sat down to gamble. Lucifer, however, had nothing to lose but his misshapen devils, and Gambling Hansel won them from him, and as with his cards he would not fail to do so. Now he was off again with his crooked devils, and they went to Honenfjord, pulled up a pot-hole. With it went to heaven, and began to thrust the pole against it, and heaven began to crack. So again St. Peter said, "Lord, this thing cannot go on, we must let him in, or he will throw us down from heaven." And they let him in, but Gambling Hansel immediately began to play again. And there was such noise and confusion that there was no hearing what themselves were saying. St. Peter said, "Lord, this cannot go on. We must throw him down, or he will make all heaven rebellious." They went to him at once, and threw him down. His soul broke into fragments, and went into the gambling vagabonds who are now living to this very day. I guess that's a fairy tale that tells the origin of crippling gambling addiction. Now, if you yourself are addicted to gambling, you can blame old gambling Hansel. Just couldn't stop playing, could he? Good God, what a story. Truly a journey that one was. A journey indeed. There we are. Gambling Hansel. Truly addicted. Very, very good. Just trying to read some more. Yes, how do you enjoy that? The origins of crippling gambling addiction. Did they leave a gambling hotline with a story? No, but maybe I should. Please gamble responsibly. What if they think they end Australian? Australian gambling ads. Truly a Disney classic, indeed. Gambling Hansel. Just trying to see what they say at the end of. Yes, they are very good. Please gamble responsibly. At the end of all the Australian gambling ads, everything. Gamble responsibly. Play with Tab now, and get better odds in the next Melbourne Cup. Gamble responsibly. But now we all know what it really need to say. Shove off, old bloody Hansel. That's what we need to say at the end of your hands. Bloody shove off, Hansel. You're getting in all of us. Your bloody shattered soul, making us all terribly addicted to gambling. We all have a bit of Hansel inside of us. Yes, I'm committing to that way of saying it. We all have Hansel inside of us. Players know when to quit, is what I remember for South Africa's gambling. We all have little Hansel inside of us. Eric Winters, 2021. Vote for Eric Winters for President 2021. I can get rid of gambling because I will do an arcane and ancient ritual to remove the gambling Hansel that is within all of us, causing gambling. So elect me, and I will actually do evil rituals, just like all those conspiracy theorists believe. Classic. Rumpelstiltskin, the Hungry Duckling. These are all very fun. I keep saying one more, but then I want to read one more. Rumpelstiltskin's not too long. By hands. The classic one more, yes. Got Rumpelstiltskin, the Ugly Duckling, which is very long. Good God. I realize how long the Ugly Duckling. Oh, I had access to it. I'd go find that old Legends and Tales book that I have. Those very nice pictures in it. One moment more before I go to bed, eh? Just one more, just one more. Usually it's for chapters of a book, but this time it's fairy tales. Well, this is a short one. Oh, it's another one with the Lord and St. Peter. They turn up in a lot of these bloody stories. Lord and St. Peter like hanging out together. Going out for drinks. All the time. So, this is called The Old Man Made Young, a tale by the Brothers Grimm. In the time when our Lord still walked this earth, he and St. Peter stopped one evening at a smith's and received free quarters. And it came to pass that an old beggar, hardly pressed by age and infirmity, came to this house and begged alms from the smith. St. Peter had compassion on him and said, Lord and Master, if it please thee, cure his torments, that he may be able to win his own bread. The Lord said kindly, Smith, lend me thy forge, and put some coals on for me, and then I will make this ailing old man young again. The smith was quite willing, and St. Peter blew the bellows. When the coal fire sparked up large and high, our Lord took the little man, pushed him into the forge, in the midst of the red-hot fire, so that he glowed like a rose bush, and praised God with a loud voice. I think God was just burning this man to death. After that, the Lord went to the quenching tub, and put the glowing little man inside it, so that water closed over him. After he had carefully cooled him, he gave him his blessing. When, behold, the little man sprang nimbly out, looking fresh, straight, healthy, as if it were but 20. The smith, who had watched everything closely and attentively, invited all of them to supper. He, however, had an old, half-blind, crooked mother-in-law who went to the youth, and with great earnestness asked if the fire had burnt him so much. He answered that the fire had never felt more comfortable. He sat in the red heat as if he had been in full dew. The oath words echoed in the ears of the old woman all night long. And early in the morning, when the Lord had gone away on his way, and heartily thanked the smith, the latter thought he might make his old mother-in-law young again. Oh dear. Oh no. Likewise, as he had watched everything so carefully, and laid in providence of his trade, he called her to ask if she too would like to go bounding about like a girl of 18. She said, With all my heart, as youth has come out of it so well. So the smith made great fire, and thrust the old woman at it. She thrived around this way and that, rising and uttered terrible cries of murder. Sit still! Why art thou screaming and jumping so? Cried he. As he spoke, he blew the bellows again until all her rags were burnt. The old woman cried without ceasing, and the smith thought to himself, I have not quite the right art. He took her out and threw her into the cooling tub. She then screamed so loudly that the smith's wife upstairs and daughter-in-law heard. They both ran downstairs and saw the old woman lying in a heap in the quenching tub, howling and screaming, face wrinkled and shriveled all out of shape, whereas the two who were both with child were so terrified that the very night 2 boys were born, who were not made like men, but apes, and they ran into the woods, and from them sprang the race of apes. What? In God's good name was that? What a twist ending! You thought this was about an idiot trying to replicate the great work of God? Set his old grandmother on light? No, it was in fact the origin stories of the gorilla? What? Or Bigfoot? What in God's good name? Some of these are just impenetrable. How bloody impenetrable. Incorrigible indeed. Well, there you go. Those the tales of the old man made young again. I knew it was going that way the moment I heard the smith was watching. Written while high, most likely. High on what, I wonder? I've met a few people in my life who would have loved to know what they were on when they wrote that. Certainly not at all what I was expecting. Looking at the next. Maybe we will finish up with old Rumpelstiltskin now, shall we? A classic. Rumpelstiltskin by the Brothers Grimm. This is a bit of a long one, but we'll finish up with it. This is truly the last one. There was once a miller who was poor, but had one beautiful daughter. It happened one day that he came to speak with the king, and, to give himself consequence, he told him that he had a daughter who could spin gold out of straw. The king said to the miller, Yes, one last one. Don't give me that look. Don't give me that look. The king said to the miller, That is an art that pleases me well. If thy daughter is as clever as you say, bring her to my castle tomorrow, that I may put her to the proof. And when the girl was brought to him, he led her into a room that was quite full of straw, and gave her a wheel and a spindle, and said, Now set to work. By early morning thou hast not spun the straw into gold, thou shalt die. Ooh, ominous. And he shut the door himself, and left her there alone. And so the poor miller's daughter was left there, sitting, and could not think of what to do for her life. She had no notion how to set to work to spin gold from straw, and in her distress grew so great that she began to weep. Oh. And then at once the door opened. Came in a little man. Said, Good evening, miller's daughter. Why are you crying? Oh, the daughter answered, I have to spin gold out of straw. I do not understand the business. And the little man said, What would you give me if I spin it for you? My necklace, said the girl. The man took the necklace, seated himself before the wheel, and whir, whir, whir. 3 times round, the bobbin was full. He then took up another, whir, whir, whir. 3 times round, and that was full. And so he went on till morning, when all the straw had been spun, and all the bobbins were full of gold. At sunrise the king came. When he saw the gold, he was astonished, very much rejoiced. He was very avaricious, actually. He had the miller's daughter taken to another room filled with straw, much bigger than the last. He told her that if she valued her life, she must spin it all in one night. The girl did not know what to do, so she began to cry. Oh, ooh, 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 ooh. Again the door opened, and the man appeared. What will you give me if I spin all of this straw into gold? Oh, the ring from my finger, answered the girl. The little man took the ring, began to send the wheel whirring around, and by the next morning, all the straw spun glistening gold. The king was rejoiced beyond measure, but could never have enough gold. He had the miller's daughter taken to a still larger room full of straw, and said, This too must be spun in a single night, and if you accomplish it, you shall be my wife. For he thought, Although she is but a miller's daughter, I am not likely to find anyone richer in the whole world. As soon as the girl was left alone, the little man appeared for the 3rd time. What will you give me if I spin straw for you this time? I have nothing left to give, answered the girl. Then you must promise me the first child you have after your queen. But who knows whether that will happen? The girl thought, but as she did not know what else to do in her necessity, she promised the little man what he desired, upon which she began to spin until all the straw was gone. And in the morning, when the king came and found was all according to his wish, he caused the wedding to be held at once, and the miller's pretty daughter became a queen. Morbid? Morbid indeed. You can see why people don't want some of these read this morning, good God. A year's time brought a fine child into the world and thought no more of the little man, but one day he suddenly came into her and said, Now give me what you promised. The queen was terrified greatly and offered the little man all the riches in the kingdom. He would only leave the child, but the little man said, No! I would rather have something living than all the treasures. And the queen began to lament and weep. So the little man had pity on her. I will give you 3 days, said he, and if at the end of that time you cannot tell me my name, you must give up the child to me. And the queen spent the whole night thinking of all the names she had ever heard, and sent a messenger throughout the lands to ask far and wide for all the names that could be found. And then the little man came, beginning with Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. She repeated all that she knew. She went through the whole list. Each man, the little man said, That is not my name. The second day, the queen sent to inquire all the neighbours what the servants were called. Told the little man all the most unusual and singular names. Perhaps you are called roast ribs, or sheep shanks, or spindle shanks. He answered nothing, but that is not my name. On the 3rd day, the messenger came again and said, I have not been able to find a single new name. As I passed through the woods to a high hill, near a little house, and before the house burned a fire and danced around a comical little man. He hopped on one leg and cried, "Today I bake, tomorrow I brew. The day after that the queen's child comes in, and I'm glad that nobody knew that the name I am called, Rumpelstiltskin." I cannot think how pleased the queen was to hear that name, and soon after, he walked in and said, "Now, my queen, what is my name?" He said at first, "Are you called Jack?" "No," answered. "Are you called Henry? Harry?" she asked again. "No," answered. Then she said, "Then perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin." "The devil told you that! The devil told you that!" cried the little man. And in his anger he stamped his right foot so hard it went into the ground above his knee. He then seized his left foot with both his hands in such fury that he split in two. And that there was the end of him. Well, he certainly got dealt a bad hand, didn't he? I was quite lucky. I could have sworn. I feel like they must have rewritten that one so she actually did something more interesting, more clever to find out, rather than just accidentally hearing him. But also, it's kind of morbid that this king just locked this woman in a cupboard. Don't you think? Very morbid. Like, mate, you've been locked away from your friends and family and told to do an impossible task, but hey, if you do it, you can be my wife. And then he keeps moving the bloody goalpost. Classic. Classic kidnapper behavior. But Rumpelstiltskin's much better. But he is providing a service at least. He just asks for some very unusual payment in exchange. I don't think my throat can handle much more. Ooh, goodness. My throat generally hurts now. I feel like I'm having cramps in my voice box. All those voices I keep doing. So I think we'll end there for today. Unfortunately. But how did you all enjoy that? Everyone have fun with that? I quite enjoyed it. This was nice. That's good. I think, for a few others' sake, I might play... I might do a game next week on Tuesday instead of a bit more of an experimental thing. I might just play a whole week of Hitman. Starting from this Thursday, going to next Thursday. So there'll be Hitman Thursday, Sunday, Tuesday and Thursday next week. Just because I'm having quite a lot of fun with those games, so... No more. There won't be an experimental stream next Tuesday morning. It'll just be here. Telling you what I'm thinking of doing. But I'm glad you all enjoyed it. Some of those tales really came out of left field. And also, God himself and St. Peter turned up in far too many of them. That was bizarre. Quick, I need to write a fairy tale and it needs a character who has... just needs a character. Quick, it's God himself. The audacity of that fellow who refused God to be his godfather just because he was, what, a communist and hated the fact that God made rich and poor people exist. Hilarious. Other than that, for the Americans out there, good night, sweet dreams, and well, don't let the bedbugs bite. Watch out for a tiny little man. Claims your firstborn, or a witch, who wants your firstborn in exchange for some vegetables. And for those who aren't in America, who are about to go to sleep, have a very good rest of your day. Hope to see you on Thursday. Au revoir, good night, goodbye. Oh yes, and thank you for this watching, everyone. It's been very kind. It's always good. Just thought I should say that. Goodbye.